You're watching the Flourishing Introvert Show. If you're an introvert with more to offer and are looking for ways to play to your strengths authentically, you're in the right place. With up to 50% of any population identifying as an introvert, if you're not one, you'll know one, but you may not understand what makes them tick. Watching this show will help you to build that understanding and consequently build better business and personal relationships. Many people don't find out until their mid-years that what makes them different is their introversion. So this show is also for you if you're curious about becoming the best version of yourself. Let's get started. Hello, welcome. Come on in and join me and make yourself comfortable as I explore a topic this week, which is the 4 keys, or 4 of the keys, not the 4 keys, 4 of the keys to a fulfilled life. Now, for those of you who've not joined me before, I'm Joanna Rawbone, the founder of Flourishing Introverts, and I'm on a mission to shift the extroversion bias so that people can own their introversion with confidence, with pride, and a lived experience of equity. And I have to say, rather disappointingly, we're a long way from that right now. So I work with introverts who want to reach more of their potential. And I also rattle the cages of organizations and educational establishments to shake out the extroversion bias that is often hiding in plain sight. Now, most of the introverts that I work with express at some point a desire for one thing, possibly above all else. And despite what we might think, it's not simply to live a quiet life. What they express is the desire to live a fulfilled life in which they can get their needs for quietness and calm met whilst they're being fulfilled, whilst they're getting fulfilled through the work they do, the purpose that they're carrying out, the life they live. You see, although we identify as introverts, we're as varied as the spectrum of colours on the Pantone palette, and that is an awful lot of colours. You see, what works for one won't necessarily meet the needs of another. So exploring and appreciating our individuality is key. Now, I've spoken about the importance of fulfillment before, and I am in no doubt that I will speak of it again as more knowledge and understanding lands with me, emerges, and wants to be shared. This week, my gaze was drawn to another book on my shelf. And this book, again, I've used as inspiration, my muse almost. So please stay with me. I think we can agree that even as introverts with a positive or a growth mindset and a positive outlook, navigating life, and in some cases the workplace that's biased as it is towards the extrovert ideal, can often be challenging. It's not uncommon to feel overwhelmed, to feel misunderstood, and even to feel undervalued. So what if there, what if there were a way to approach life? I'm going to have to take a drink of water. Excuse me. I've been struggling with this silly cough for a long time now. So what if there were a way to approach life and work that allowed you to feel better about yourself, better about your abilities, and better about your contributions? Excuse me. Well, enter my muse book for this year, or for this week, and it's actually the 4 Agreements, a practical guide to personal freedom, which was written by Don Miguel Ruiz. Now, the 4 Agreements are a powerful set of principles that talk not about a destination or an end goal, but a way of being that allows us to feel happier and to experience that deep sense of fulfillment as we live our lives. So are you ready to hear more? It's said that these agreements are rooted in ancient Toltec wisdom. Now, in case you've not heard of the Toltec before, they were known throughout southern Mexico as women and men of knowledge. They formed a society to explore and conserve the spiritual knowledge and practices of their ancestors. So Toltec is not a religion, but a way of life, distinguished by the ready accessibility of happiness and love. Personally, I feel like this world needs to reconnect with this ancient Toltec wisdom. And as a starting point, I'm happy to explore with you at a relatively superficial level the framework for personal growth and self-awareness that the 4 agreements provide. Now, we know that there are thousands of agreements that each of us have made with ourselves and with others. So why are these 4 so significant? I think it's because they really say something about who we are and how we can be known. They feed into our personal brand, the things people say about us when we're not in the room. And people recognize them in the way that we conduct ourselves and in our behaviors and in our personality. The 4 agreements can be perceived as quite demanding on us, and yet in the same breath, they're pure and simple too. I can also see how they tie in with the thinking environment that I explored last week. So let's start then with the first agreement. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Oh dear, this cough is going to annoy me. If we look at the etymology of impeccable, peccatus is without sin. So impeccable, peccatus is sin. Oh dear. Peccatus is sin. So impeccable is without sin. And this literally means speaking truthfully and honestly, avoiding gossip, criticism, and negativity about ourselves and about others. So this isn't only about the truth that we speak of others, but also how we speak of ourselves. We know that many of us as introverts prefer to listen rather than speak, especially filling, almost filling a void that doesn't need filling. So unnecessary conversation or speaking aloud really isn't necessary. We mostly prefer to keep ourselves to ourselves and avoid conflict. Most of the introverts I work with would describe themselves as conflict averse. But when we do communicate, it's important that we are kind, that we're respectful, that we're open, and that we're authentic. And again, both with others and with ourselves. So we need to speak kindly of ourselves. By speaking with integrity and kindness, we build trust and respect with colleagues and friends, and we make friends with ourselves too. This is also about keeping the commitments that we do make to others, which is why I will never make excuses when someone invites me to something that I have no intention of attending. I see in some of the introvert groups that people will say, oh yeah, I'll be there, when they don't intend to. For me, that doesn't work because that's not me being impeccable with my word. So one way introverts can be impeccable with their word is by practicing a gift that we often have naturally, which is active and empathic listening. This means truly hearing what someone else is saying to us and responding rather than reacting in a thoughtful and respectful manner. So we can play to our think, say, think communication process. So we take the time to reflect before responding to a question or a comment. That might mean that we need to use the placeholders that I've talked about on some previous shows, where we let people know that we have something to contribute. It's just not quite there yet for us. And using this approach can really help us ensure that our words are thoughtful and accurate. I think Viktor Frankl's piece here, remember Viktor Frankl was the amazing psychiatrist in the prisoner of war camp who made so many observations and almost wrote a book in his head before he was released from the prisoner of war camp, before he was rescued from there. And he wrote his thoughts in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And what he said is, and I will use this phrase so many times, and I think it's completely relevant here. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. Very wise and, frankly, I think, beautiful words. And of course, that applies to us when we're thinking maybe negative thoughts about ourselves, when we're being hard on ourselves. Again, take that space. Think about how we're going to respond. Think about how we can be kinder to ourselves so that we are impeccable with our words, so that we are without sin with our words about ourselves too. I mentioned that there are 4 agreements here, and the next 3 are born from this first one. So the second agreement is, and this can be a toughie, don't take anything personally. I love this agreement as it means recognizing that other people's actions and words are not a reflection of you, but rather a reflection of their own beliefs and experiences. It's often a projection. And frankly, it would be somewhat egocentric to think that everything is about me, everything is about us. So we would do well to remember that the actions of others are not a reflection of our worth or our value as a person. It is a reflection of who they are. In the book, The 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz says that that this is about immunity to poison in the middle of hell. And I can just imagine that sense of, when there is a lot going on around us, that we're not impacted by it in the same way if we choose not to make it about ourselves. It's also about rejecting the inferiority complex that Caroline McHugh talks about in her wonderful TED talk. And it is about seeking interiority, which she describes as entirely unrelative, because for inferiority or superiority, we're comparing ourselves with others. This state of interiority means that what we're doing is not relative to somebody else. It's a complete connection with ourselves. It's an orientation. And she says it's the only place in our life, the only place where we have no competition. And if you haven't watched her amazing TED talk before, which is The Art of Being Yourself, I thoroughly recommend it. So we know as introverts that we may be more sensitive to criticism or rejection, especially after years or decades of being told, that we're not enough or that we need to be something other than who we are. But by not taking it personally, we can avoid the unnecessary stress and conflict that seems to come with what we perceive as criticism or rejection. I still remember the words that Byron Katie talks about when she says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that there are three types of business. There's my business, your business, and God's business, by which she means something larger than the both of us, or the all of us, actually. And the only place you have any business being is in your own business. So again, that stops us from taking on wholesale what seems to be coming in our direction. So it enables us to not take it personally. To apply this principle, again, I think what we're doing is separating ourselves from our emotions. And again, I refer to Caroline McHugh here when she says that we are not our feelings. We feel our feelings, we are not our feelings. When we feel hurt or upset, it can be easy to take things personally. However, by taking a step back and recognizing that our feelings are not necessarily a reflection of reality, we can begin to let go of negative emotions and move forward with a clearer head. So we are not our feelings, we feel our feelings in the same way that we are not our thoughts. We think our thoughts, but actually we're separated from them if we choose to look at it that way. And I think that's the time to focus on our own values and goals and let go of the opinions of others. So the third agreement is don't make assumptions. And again, this can be quite challenging because as humans, we are meaning-making machines. Stuff happens and we make sense of it often through making assumptions initially. So this is actually quite tough. What this requires us to do is to avoid the mind reading where we assume we know what people are thinking and feeling, where we assume that we know what other people's intentions are, because we know that assumptions are dangerous unless they are stated as such. Funny enough, I was running a course today on negotiation skills. And one of the things that we talked about was the importance of clarifying assumptions, because sadly, too many people present their assumptions as though it were a universal truth. They will say, it is, there is, as opposed to, in my opinion, this, or I consider it to be this. So when we make assumptions, we need to own those assumptions and state them as such. And this is about seeking clarity and understanding through meaningful and purposeful communication. We know that as introverts, we're more likely to observe, potentially overthink, and maybe even jump to conclusions when asked to make a decision. But actually, this is about asking questions to gather facts and data, to seek clarification and feedback so that you avoid misunderstandings and can build stronger relationships. I know that there are some introverts who say that they will avoid communication at all cost. But please remember that that is not a natural facet of introversion. There are other factors at play there for those people who literally avoid communication at all costs. And for people like me with a mission or a purpose to deliver, non-communication is not an option. And it also goes against the grain of what it means to be human, because we are designed to communicate. We just need to make sure that we are charged enough for that communication to be carried out in a way that we can sustain. The fourth agreement is always do your best. And if the second, third, and fourth were born from the first agreement, this final agreement is about enacting the first three whenever and wherever possible, because it means giving things your full effort and attention. So every task that you turn to, that you choose to do, giving that your full attention. Recognizing that your best may vary depending on the circumstances. And there are a few things that immediately come to mind here for us as introverts. And the first question that I consider, I suppose, is, am I in an environment that's conducive to me doing my best work? Because for me, that's not an open plan office. It's not a busy environment. It's somewhere quiet where I can focus, where I can get into flow. The second question, if I'm going to do my best, is, have I asked for what I need? Are the resources available? Have I upheld my boundaries, for instance? And the third question, of course, if I'm to do my best, is, am I sufficiently recharged? So for me, I always, at the end of each day, look ahead into the next day to see what is planned and make sure that I can do whatever I can during the evening and maybe early in the morning, the next morning before the work day starts, or even the social day, come to that, to make sure that my social, emotional and mental batteries are carrying enough charge to see me through that day. And if it looks like a really busy day, I make sure I've got my brilliant battery boosters with me. As introverts, we may struggle with self-doubt, with perfectionism, lack of confidence. And so what we need to do is think about focusing on the present moment. Often the perfectionism comes from looking back over the past and judging ourselves about whether what we did was good enough. And there can be some anxiety about what's coming up and whether we're going to do well enough in the future. So focusing on that present moment so that we are in the best state possible to do our best is going to help build our confidence and build our self-esteem. As an introvert as well, you may have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on yourself to excel. But this is a time to practice self-compassion, to be impeccable with your word, to be kind to yourself in your words and your thoughts, to give yourself credit for the effort you put in, regardless of the outcome. You know, this can help you feel more confident in your abilities and reduce those feelings of self-doubt. So what I've given you is a very brief précis, a brief overview of the 4 agreements. We know that it is a powerful framework for personal growth and self-awareness. And as introverts, we can apply these principles in our lives so that we feel better about who we are, about what we're doing, and about how we're showing up in life. So be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And when you apply those agreements, when you live by those agreements, I can assure you that it enables you to cultivate a sense of inner peace and confidence, both in who we are and in our abilities. So that really was just a précis, just a taster. And if you found it of interest, I strongly suggest you read the book. And I know many of you will probably have the book on your shelves. So I suggest you take it down from the shelf and give it another read through, because there's so much more to it than clearly I've been able to share here. If you'd like to know more about some of the work I do, then please, by all means, have a look at the website, which is flourishingintroverts.com, where you'll find useful information, information coming up about courses, about freebies that are downloadable, all sorts of things there. And by all means, email me, joanna@flourishingintroverts.com, so that you can let me know how you are living again with these agreements, I guess. And if you know that you need a bit more charge in your batteries in order to do your best, check out my brilliant battery boosters, which you'll find on the website. And I said it wouldn't be the last time that I talk about fulfillment. And indeed, starting next month, we have the Unfulfilled to Flourishing program coming up, which is absolutely going to be looking at these and other issues around what it really means as an introvert to live a fulfilled life. So, thank you for joining me today. I hope you're able to join me again in the future. And remember, do email me if you'd like to either suggest a topic for me to talk about, to explore here, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or just if you have any feedback. Thank you for joining me.